Next, we do a switch change in panels. Thanks again, Nadja and Moritz. So now we have Nadine coming in, we have Erich coming in, and we have Johannes coming in. So let's maybe start again with the ladies first. If you're ready, Nadine, maybe a first quick round of introduction, and we will talk about carbon banking. That's the headline we gave it, but of course we all know that carbon certificate markets is also an area that raises a lot of interest if it comes to tokenizing them and establishing those markets. I was just in Brussels yesterday and today, and also the European Commission confirmed that they are looking into these markets. So it is certainly an interesting field. Nadine?
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
awesome.
Works well.
Yes, I'm Nadine, one of the co-founders of Particula. And to introduce myself, I have a classical business background and worked for a big SDAX company in the emerging tech department. And therefore, I had touching points of blockchain more in the industry to see how you can leverage different kind of technologies for that. And notice, okay, for me, blockchain makes the most sense more in the finance world. And my co-founder, he has a background in finance and also in consultancy for different kind of projects in the crypto space or digital asset space, and especially in tokenization. And we founded then the startup Particula, which is basically a rating and data analytics provider for all kinds of tokenized assets. So we are looking, for instance, at real estate tokenization, financial products, but also commodities and environmental assets where carbon is a part of it, analyzing it and creating ratings for that. Besides that, we're also working on standardization. So that's a big topic for us, being a thought leader of, okay, how you can harmonize the different languages. What is real-world assets actually? I think this is also kind of like a buzzword nowadays. And happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadine. Looking forward to dive deeper into what you just mentioned, both the terminology and also your journey at Particula. Before we head southeast, let's first head northwest. Erich Schnoeckel, you're part of Two Tokens Foundation in the Netherlands. So please take the stage and introduce yourselves, and also a few words about Two Tokens. Not everybody might have heard of you.
Two Tokens is actually, I think, comparable to what Bundesblock is doing at the moment. We try to propagate use of tokenization in the Netherlands, and with a bit of jealousy, we look at what's happening in Germany at the moment, where I think things are, as already was said by Nadja, are going a bit faster than here in the Netherlands. But my background is in accountancy. IT and accountancy, actually. So I worked for an accountancy software firm, and there stumbled upon Bitcoin about 10 years ago. And I thought it would be nice to have that implemented in the accountancy system to make the entrepreneur less dependent on banks for his financial transactions. We're still not there yet, but I think that in the end that we will be there. And at Two Tokens, I'm working on a number of projects. I worked on the invoice market project, where we traced actually invoices for their financing along their life cycle, so to make sure that they weren't funded twice or lended twice, as we call that, and also created more information on the invoice itself to see what payment terms were met and things like that. Now we're working on the carbon credits, on the carbon token, I must say, and as a real-world assets, it's one of the, I think, the most interesting ones. We already touched upon ESG a bit, and we'll talk probably more about that later. So I'll give the floor to Johannes first before we start going into that part, I suppose.
Thanks, Erich. Johannes, welcome, Vienna.
Thank you, Erich, and thanks, Sebastian, for the invitation. So my name is Johannes, one of the co-founders for KUMO, and KUMO is pioneering carbon banking through basically collateralizing carbon credits, and we issued the first ever carbon secured loan from COP28 last year, and we went through the Techstars Accelerator program with ABN AMRO but we then also issued a second deal. And when it comes to the financial tool we are developing, it's working capital, project finance, bonds, and blended finance. On the financial engineering side of things, on the technical level, I would say we are building two products, one Web 2, one Web 3, depending also on the market participants that we are talking with. And for our product to work, we need to have a project developer, a corporate offtake agreement, and essentially a liquidity provider. And so we are innovating on the front of legal questions. So how do you legally also tokenize or use tokenized KUMO credits as collateral, for example, or KUMO forwards or spot KUMO credits, and make it basically something that is worthwhile to get a loan against. And with that, I think we are trying to pioneer on these three fronts and make KUMO banking a reality.
So if you allow, let me ask one question to clarify things here a little bit before we then can jump back to Nadine's comment about, the positioning of real world assets, a buzzword versus a real differentiator towards or against pure financial asset tokenization. If you talk about carbon banking, you want basically that projects that are getting carbon certificate because of what they're doing, that they don't need to sell them to get additional capital from the market, but they can lend and take those carbon certificates that they are earning as a security or collateral. And you need liquidity partners like ABN AMRO and other financial institutions to basically be able to provide that financial service. And might be my personal understanding, but I always think of real world asset tokenization. Yes, there must be a link to, let's say, a physical good, but typically we also think or like to think about it as something that has previously not been necessarily leveraged, or at least in a very indirect way. Is this assessment correct? And how would you explain that nobody was doing it before, what you are doing now? So what has been your journey?
Yeah, so when it comes to our journey, I would say we started off with designing like a green stablecoin and being extremely Web3 and DeFi heavy. And then accelerator program with Techstars, we were basically pivoting our model and basically open up and said, okay, what are the last elements of that we can still keep in order to go to market and find product market fit, which we then eventually did by using the CRISP-M token from Solid World, who tokenized KUMO forwards from Mangrove project developers like Elcott and Plinda. And with our solution, we then pioneered the KUMO secured lending model, announced it from COP28, and were till today mentioned as the first ever, even showed up in the Zero Market Association presentation as an innovation in the KUMO market evolution. And at the moment, our main question is, how do you funnel the much needed liquidity to the KUMO project developers by using the balance sheets of TradFi, who also face regulatory basically challenges and rules that are coming up in order to greenify or make their balance sheets more sustainable. And this is something where we believe that our solution could be a puzzle piece in order to show that KUMO credits are financially attractive and can help you actually to either make money or save money, depending on the use case. But on a high level, that would be my answer.
Thanks a lot. And that immediately leads us back to Nadine from your tokenization, let's say, classification point of view and your experience with the data surrounding all those processes. What would be your definition of real-world asset tokenization? Do you have a good one that you use? Because I think, of course, it will not be carved in stone, but certainly we see too many real-world assets popping up, at least in headlines in webinars like ours. That's why I'm personally interested to get some clarity on, where we should better talk about RWA versus where should we better talk about financial assets and tokenizing them?
Yeah, I think why did we come up with that? So we created this classification system, which, by the way, makes totally sense if you guys also, after this webinar, go to our blog post page on our website, because there you see like the whole map, and it makes sense to visualize what I'm just explaining. We needed to classify it because it's super hard to analyze those assets if you cannot say, okay, what is it and how do, like, in what bucket does it fall, because this is important to know, to understand the characteristics of these assets, and also the risk which is involved when you're tokenizing an asset. There are massive more risks which are getting created because of the different layers, and you can like have now different perspectives on that. I will not go into detail because it's the map is too big for that, but to distinct maybe the left arm of the classification system, which we do in terms of, okay, you have the tokenized assets, and then you have at one side the financial assets, which are fixed income products and equities, so really classical financial products. And on the right side, you have real-world assets, which are basically all asset-backed assets, but which are more in the alternative areas. So real assets, for instance, which we have real estate, land use, infrastructure projects. Then you have commodities with precious metals, rare earth, and other agrar products. You have miscellaneous assets, so to say, which is all luxury goods like watches or collectibles, cars, diamonds. And these are for us the real-world assets, so-called. It's important because you have different jurisdictions also on both sides, because financial assets are definitely have other jurisdictions than the real assets. And in terms of analyzing, you also have different perspective to do it. So that's why we had to make it separate, and also to have a clear line of the underlying, so to say. I know it can be confusing, but like I said, guys, check the website out and look at the map. It makes sense to then you see, okay, how is it connected with each other.
Okay, I already have a next question for you. You can prepare for a bit while I go over to Erich. So my next question to you, Nadine, is that you explain where your customers and partners come in and what they get from Particula if they want to define their end-to-end processes. Maybe we can also discuss how you could collaborate with a company like KUMO to make it quite tangible for the audience. But Erich, back to you. You mentioned the carbon tokenization working group or project of Two Tokens. Two Tokens is also an official European test bed. So please explain a little bit about this specific project and how it makes use of the capabilities and also the ecosystem you have built up over the past 5-6 years at Two Tokens.
Well, actually, it started with when we had a project about energy tokenization. So we wanted to tokenize energy derived from that was generated by solar panels, and trade that locally, so in a peer-to-peer fashion. And it's still a project that is still running, but one of the byproducts was these carbon credits that were derived from these solar panels. And we looked at these carbon credits, and there was a lot of demand, and there's also a lot of demand there because of all the, I would say, CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, where people need to report on what their carbon footprint is and how they manage that in a sense. And so everybody was looking at carbon to offset their footprints. And the people in that energy work group said, let's take that out of the energy. Let's not mingle the two and make it too complex. And let's make sure that we have these people that so bring supply and demand sides on the carbon side together as well. And that's what we start to do. And then of course it's really difficult to tokenize things that you not easy can control. So if we're talking about rainforest in South Africa and tokenize rainforest in South Africa because of the carbon, they they generate, or the carbon that can be offset there, then how do you make sure that things happen in a way you think? It's really distant. Forests, sometimes burn down intentionally, and sometimes or not intentionally. But so you have to make sure that everything is followed in the way that the transparency is still there, the trustworthiness of these tokens are still there, and that's what we try to describe in a way where, especially on the first mile, you need to audit things still, but you need to limit that and make sure that you work with credentials. And one of the things also mentioned already was these digital product passports. It's actually a component in a digital product passport as well, will be carbon. And that's why if you tokenize that in a proper way, you can use that in your product passports and make sure that that the offset has been done in a proper way. And so in the supply and demand side, you have always people in between, like Johannes in there as well, that we looked at, and we talked about that as when Johannes was in Amsterdam working in that accelerator program of ABN AMRO. We talked about that as well, and basically the way we want to use these tokens is to make sure that we can balance supply and demand sides in a proper way, in a transparent way, in an automated way as much as possible, and make sure that you can go and trade, buy or sell. And the funny thing is, large companies like Tata Steel and Shell are also part of these initiatives to make sure that they understand what tokenization can bring to their business operation as well.
And I think you have a good mix of participants into tokens. You have big corporates like Shell or the Port of Rotterdam. You have municipalities. You have the Dutch banks, plus the short distances in the Netherlands, which allows you to come together, typically in person, which is a big benefit compared to a more decentralized market.
The
such as
tokenization
Germany.
doesn't stop at the border, right? So we also
true, but
reach out to other parties in Europe, and we need to do that because of the European funding that we also have. We need to make sure that we also have participants from other countries in there as well. So yeah,
that's also why we are starting to collaborate now more. But can you please let the audience know what you will publish as an outcome of this tokenization project? What kind of a learning or write down can we expect, and when is it going to take place?
It's taking place this year, and an excerpt of what we are going to publish is already published in your report of INATBA, I think, or will be published in your INATBA report in the next few weeks or months. I don't know exactly. What we are doing is we are writing down in a white paper how we see the token emerge and evolve over time with the different market parties involved. We talk about it like here, but also on other events, and we write a white paper in the end. And with the people we work with, the startups, the corporates, they take it to the market level. We don't do that. We only help them to make sure that they understand each other, and that we bring something to the market that corporates and startups can work with, also with a solid legal base beneath it. And that's all taking place this year, and it should be ready, if everything is ever ready, but it should be published by the end of this year. And if it's a ready state, I don't know, markets evolve, products evolve, so that can be a in-between state anyway. But it's so with the energy, it was an in-between state, and we moved on and took it to the next level as well.
Thank you, Erich. The report you alluded will be the Industrial Blockchain Task Force report. I run this task force at INATBA. This will be published first week of June latest. So we're currently in the final editorial phase. Erich was contributing as well. But now jumping back to Nadine, your business at Particula and the data streams that you are working on, where do you come in? So I guess that Erich and to tokens description will also cover, let's say, parts of the value chain that Particula is working on. So when is the best time to call Particula, and you know, how do you see yourself as a prerequisite for a standardized or streamlined carbon banking business in the future?
Yeah, I think to raise some critical voices here, because the carbon space or the environmental space in general, or the alternative in general, has still the problems. Like, I see still that many issuers are struggling, so they are not getting their tokens sold. Institutional investors are still missing. When I'm like telling institutionals about that, they're depending where they're located. When they're from the United States, they're like, okay, we don't care. So I only hear Europeans saying that they care, actually, when it's about ESG data or environmental assets. So I still think it needs time, that the interest is big enough for many issuers to survive in this market. I still see that there has to be a lot of also data management has to happen. And also, the problem, if you in general look for carbon credits, as we discussed here, only for the use case of offsetting, that's not interesting for the most of the financial institutions who are looking for very liquid assets, which they can like bundle, or which they can also trader, which they can trade immediately and get profit out of it. I think there are some good initiatives who are trying to solve this issue, or trying to think more around of like nature equity, so to say, creating assets which are not for the purpose of offsetting, but for generating, you know, money flows into a project, or preserving projects. I think this is interesting, but still in the beginning. And I think we come in when somebody really has a product which is ready. When somebody is coming and saying, hey, I have an idea, I have a forest and I want to have now carbon credits, I'm like, okay, that's too early for me. Please figure out at first how you want to do it in a technical way. How, like, whose service provider you want to use. For instance, you go to Moritz von Token Forge and work together with him. What jurisdiction you want to use, who should be your client, and also what rights do you want to have in the token. So if you have all these questions answered, then you can come to us in order to discuss the quality. Also get listed on our platform to get you more visibility for investors. But yeah, for the rating business, I think it's quite early still, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe we are getting faster there than I hope.
And I think we, if we talk about trust and problems in the market, we also have to differentiate between the discussions that are around blockchain and tokenization. Are we too early, etc.? And then we also, especially in the voluntary carbon markets, we had the trust issues of the standards there themselves, Vera and Gold Standard, which were not helpful for the first wave of, let's say, refi businesses. Johannes, since you now have your, Erich, let's maybe ask Johannes first. Since you now have a financial product and service that seems to make a lot of sense, I think it will be crucial for you to bank on very solid projects. What have you done in terms of audit your first collateral projects, and then over to Erich for the discussion?
Yeah, so typically we rely a lot on the previous value chain steps that take place. So typically you have the project developer that does the intervention, then you have the MRV part to describe high level how it works, and the measurement reporting verification. Then you have the registries like Vera Gold Standard, the credits. Then you can, if you think about tokenization infrastructure, bridges players like Token or Flow Carbon that are tokenizing these assets, or Solid World. And then we basically, in the Web3 solution, would then take these tokenized carbon credits as collateral and gauge what is the collateral worth, how much liquidity is there, and so on, and then issue a loan. That's what we've done. And the main topic there is obviously that the complexity of carbon credits plus tokenization with the missing demand from corporates or governments is basically putting the market to a halt. You have, to at least to my knowledge, you have two tokenized carbon credits on chain, which is CHAR from Toucan and Pure Earth, and the one from Crisp from Solid World with the Crisp M token. And in order to vet then the criteria or the project that we take into our model and financialize it is then to have discussions directly with the project developers to see how long have they been in business, what have they done, have they already issued with current gold standard, what type of carbon credits are there, what is the time, and so on, which so you try to have the almost complete picture of the risk profile that you can have of data points, and then also you go into the discussions with the project developers and see if they have corporate offtake agreements, if they also qualify maybe for Article 6 or CORSIA. And then depending on what type of collateral they bring in the end to the table and the financing needs, we start to then basically structure these loans and identify the capital needs, if it's like a working capital solution or a project finance solution. And then we start approaching the liquidity providers with these structured loans. And this is how we go about it. And we also have to make it a bit more financial, and typically a loan to value ratio of 50% and a liquidation threshold of 75%, and also set contracts in place last resorts, and even also thinking about products that can be connected to it. So just to paint a bit the picture of the complexity of how to do it and then how to get it done.
Thank you, Johannes. You broke up a little bit now and then, or maybe it was only me, not sure, but I think we could understand you. Might be the beauty of the graphic design in your back.
That's its own that's its own kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about trust, Erich. You mentioned it, and Nadine as well, and Johannes as well. Is the real differentiator, if we talk about real world assets, whether they are machine to machine? So if we use hardware crypto anchors, it will be, of course, possible to sign energy produced or energy consumed by a machine. If we rely on human inspection, then there might still be room for corruption before metadata are entered into a blockchain registry. There is, of course, satellite observation about the biomass, in certain rainforest areas, but this might not be granular enough going forward. So what are you suggesting, or what was the outcome of the discussions at your working group? Because, and this to of course also Nadine and Particula, and I'm sure you have solutions for this. There is a difference between data and data. Yeah, we have to ask about data provenance.
There's always the thing that if you look at, and we said the same thing actually with invoices, if there's no one system that you record your information in, but there's multiple systems next to each other, there's always a room for fraud, right? Even if you check, if I would register my carbon credits on different systems or different protocols, then I can double spend or double lend my carbon, and that's the same what happened with invoices, or can happen with invoices. And so if you want to do wrong, there's still opportunity to do wrong, but you can more easily check what's happening. And especially again, the first mile is the most important part. Are these trees really there? And you say yes, a satellite observation sees what's happening there. To a certain extent, there's always limitations there. And so, but then you can also have these credentials brought in by others. So, and you can reward people to bring these credentials to on chain or into an Oracle or whatever that you can also check. But that we're a long way from that actually, and Carbify is one of these projects that really works with people that maintain their plantations with trees and make sure that for every tree that is tokenized, they actually have two in spare as well, perhaps not on the same grounds, but somewhere else, so that there is room if something happens with forest fires or perhaps infections of their trees, that they still have some backing to go on. But that's basically because we cannot check everything in the way we wanted to do. But yeah, it's one of the solutions that you can look into, and it brings more transparency and more trustworthiness to the system. But will we ever reach 100%, a max? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, it will for sure depend on the use cases. Nadine, maybe a question to you. If we talk about data, there are of course two sides of this medal. One is, let's say, descriptive data, more the verifiable credentials or registry function of blockchain. The other side are data markets, where we can enable also new business models, or at least model things more efficiently through the use of gamification to a certain part. Where do you see the market going if we talk about sustainability and ESG? And how would you think that businesses like Johannes with the carbon banking approach, where we see a clear combination of, let's say, learn financial models and business models, and to drive adoption of a certain desired behavior, can change the speed of market adoption?
A lot of questions. I think where is the market going? Maybe let's start there. I think the market is definitely going in the direction to leverage more and more technology. I go with Erich that it's hard to get the 100% because it's always because if you're not trusting humans, we have to trust tech, and tech is also not always, there can also function failures. You have to make sure that, I don't know, when you use IoT devices, that they are like everywhere and always working, and when they don't, then you have also kind of like a problem. I think the also direction goes more into not taking something which is there and then bringing it onto blockchain. It's more like natively creating assets. So, okay, we are not tokenizing the existing certificate, for instance. We are creating tokens immediately when there's something measured natively on the blockchain, so that you have the shortest way of data, so to say, so that there's not a lot of, I would say, intermediaries which can maybe make which are maybe putting in some false numbers or whatever. It doesn't have to be always intentionally that people are doing something wrong. Mostly it's not intentionally, actually. And then also, like you said, it's depending on the asset class. So when we are talking about energy projects, of course, you have a way better way of measuring the impact. If we're talking about nature-based products, it's always a mess. But not only for nature-based product, also, I mean, we talked in the beginning about real estate. It's still a struggle of harmonizing the off-chain data world with the on-chain data world. So you have to not only harmonize it, but it has to be constantly saying what is going on. So the numbers which are on the blockchain always have to match with what is going on, and this is super, super tricky, especially when you look at prices. So the price of the underlying assets is, for instance, changing. How is it affecting the price of the asset which is on the blockchain? And there are many big institutions who have problems of price discovery and really like trying to figure out how is it acting and developing over time, because you don't have the traditional way to do it. So these are all things to consider, but definitely innovative startups who are working also close with TradFi people and banks, it's always the way to go, because you have to adapt to their infrastructure. You have to make it easier for them, not more complicated. And also you have to understand how they are working, instead of building something which you think is perfect, but it's not working in real life for them. And I think then also a lot of money can flow into it, because we need the institutionals to get a lot of money into the assets, and not just from retail clients, so to say.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nadine. Quite insightful, and this leads me to a question to Johannes. we all know that the technical act of tokenization is not rocket science, at least not anymore. It's becoming more and more of a commodity with different specialized service providers. Before you found your model, what would you describe as a differentiator for KUMO? Is it the algorithms that you're using, or where's the, let's say, genius if you want to come up with a new model like yourself did? We said we cannot fully guarantee trust. We might be able to guarantee it almost 100% in some use cases. But in others, where's the beauty if you need to make compromises?
I think it's about how you deal with the risk. That if you deal with a TradFi institution like ABN AMRO, you need to understand what are the risks that they have and understand when they look at something like carbon credits. They understand that carbon credits is a new sort of asset class that is becoming very important in the near future, and it will be also a regulatory thing for them. So understanding all these aspects was key for us to then develop a solution that actually can be supported by them, but it was also that we had a lot of discussions with them running through the accelerator program, and then actually also just doing it, right? So a lot of these new asset classes can be perceived as too risky or too small, or overall the integrity is lacking, but actually doing something is getting it done and showing that it's, instead of talking about it, doing it and actually executing on the idea. And that's also how we now differentiate ourselves, that we always try to get into positions where we structure deals and get them financed, and actually showing that the model works and that we are able to deliver on our main value proposition, which is to bridge finance from the TradFi balance sheets to the carbon markets. And yeah, being a startup, obviously you need to start small and you need to basically show that it works. But afterwards, it's also about scaling it and showing that there's money to be made by doing the right thing. And that's the second biggest mission next to bridging the liquidity.
Thanks, Johannes. And now we come basically to the closing round. If you have any questions, then please post them in the chat window. I will start with Erich again here. So if we look at to tokens and the different formats that you have, you managed to bring a lot of industry players and stakeholders at the table, something that is maybe missing a bit here in Germany. Typically here you have, state-funded consortia, and that's where you meet, but then outside there's less of, let's say, group interaction, and it's rather bilateral business development, which make things a bit complicated. We also said that it might take a while before not only the market picks up, but before, let's say, the willingness to act in accordance with CSRD or ESG goals is really brought to life. So apart from bringing groups together and making pilot projects or reports, do you think that the incoming regulation will be the driving force? Because at the political arena, we already see that, at least in Germany, there is a discussion about, scaling regulatory pressure back a little bit because the economy is not doing well. So is it sufficient to have ESG regulation, or what can we do to ignite the turnaround of projects?
I think the answer is yes, it helps a lot because there's a lot of attention at all levels to look at solutions that can make sure that the reporting is done in a proper way. But on the other hand, no, we also see the what we call an administrative burden for the companies growing and the resistance towards it. And I personally think then the solution is to automate it in a proper way. And then again, blockchain and trustworthiness is one of the solutions. So yes, it can be a driver On the other hand, no, they might draw back a bit, but if they want to do it proper, then blockchain is the only solution.
Perfect. Nadine, do you agree that we're right now in a data aggregation phase? If we talk about CSRD or ESG regulation, all the companies are trying to get their data sources down to scope 3 together. So it's more like, an hands-on approach. How do we bridge the gaps? And would you also agree that maybe only in 2-3 years' time, we really might be able to harvest the benefits of data automation and ensuring data quality? But personally, our perception here is, and also my perception is, that this might be the 2 stages.
Yeah,
Sorry for that.
I think so there are 2 sides, right? I also think, like Erich said, that you get a lot of attention of that. You force companies to look into that, and to find also their own very own strategy to raise awareness. On the other hand, when I also I was also talking to some corporates last year. When I talked to them and asked them how they feel about it, I also got their information that they said, hey, it's also kind of like stopping innovation right now because we are so busy in calculating and restructuring and doing all the annoying stuff that you cannot focus. Okay, what can we like do externally? For instance, what can we do in order to decrease our carbon footprint, because we're so busy with structuring everything internally. So I think it's interesting. I have no idea how this will develop, to be honest. I have no idea if we are in 2 years at the stage that massive money inflows goes into carbon projects or in general environmental projects. I hope so. But it can be also, pretty challenging for the corporates. So let's see who's winning in the end.
Okay, thank you. In any case, thank you for all your contributions, Erich, and to Tokens, for the working groups and bringing the industry together. Nadine, in particular, for taking care of data. And I think you're also doing a conference, right, soon to talk about this. Maybe you can say a few words.
Yes, on the 18th of June in Frankfurt, we are organizing an event about tokenization. It's called Token Future. So we are also presenting different use cases. It's mainly for banks, asset managers, infrastructure providers. So if anyone is interested, just write me a message. I can send you a code to get a ticket.
Okay, and of course, also thank you, Johannes, for innovating on the modeling side. I think that's what is really needed, because we often hear the criticism that there are no mass market, services and applications of blockchain in the market. Of course, that's not true, because many companies and projects are building on infrastructure. But sometimes that's not visible, not only to outsiders, but also within our community. I just had a nice LinkedIn debate today about underlying infrastructure technology versus business model and what the political assessment is. I'm personally convinced that, of course, all this will be applied. We might need to wait for 2-3 years before things are heating up. But in the meantime, yes, we have to do the groundwork. We have to work on the quality of solutions, on the quality of communication. We need to afford partnerships. So thank you for listening in today. And maybe one last question to everybody. If we talk in, let's say, 3 years' time, 2027, what do you think will be different by then? Yes, CSRD will be in place for large and medium-sized corporates. I'm pretty sure we will see more carbon banking models thanks to KUMO and other players. But what might change in the next 3 years, midterm horizon? What's your guess? Maybe everybody says one thing, and then we wrap it up. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I think it will be taken down to the individual level, so that now we're talking about, especially for carbon, we're talking about industry, about large, medium-sized corporations. take it to everyone, every citizen, and not from a controlling perspective, but from a doing good perspective, not giving people a carbon budget, because I would strongly oppose that, but make sure that they are aware of what they're doing and what they can do themselves.
Okay, makes sense. And we have the tools, gamify, tokenize. Nadine, Johannes, any wild or educated guess about the next 3 years?
Johannes, do you want to start?
Sure. From my perspective, we're in the reporting phase for corporates, or generally figuring out what is the carbon footprint. So what was said before. So we have this phase. What is a sustainability report? What is scope 1, 2, 3, and so forth? And from my perspective, this discussion is already like heating up and going in the way that they have to do it. And when it comes then to the regulatory framework in the European Union with the European Green Deal, I believe that a solution like KUMO then is detrimental in order to finance that net zero target that you reported on, and how do you do it in a capital efficient way. And this is exactly what we are positioning ourselves for, with different use cases and different deals showing that financing your net zero targets can be done in a capital efficient manner. And therefore, my guess is that we will see a lot of demand for high quality carbon credits or environmental assets. And we also think about, next to carbon credits, biodiversity, plastic, water credits, and so on. There will be a whole new world of tokenized assets on chain, in my perception, and it can be then used for showing that if a company or corporate needs to comply, or even countries, that they have purchased these assets and have actually shown, maybe even on the blockchain, that they have done this. This might be a bit utopian, not in 3 years, maybe in 5 or 10. But yeah, I think leading with a business case and showing that you can make money or save money is the way to go, and also to simplify the language and actually leave out Web3 and blockchain components as much as you can, in order to really get deep into the conversations with the corporates and not scare them away.
Thanks for sharing the perspective. And Nadine has the last word for today.
Yeah,
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I make it short. I also think high quality will come definitely. Technology is evolving very, very fast. And if regulation, so is everything set in place in 2027, I think, but I also consider the difficult economical and also political environment we have right now in Germany and also in Europe. There was just one law which just got staked, where it was about protecting areas and restoring here in Europe. So yeah, let's see how it goes. I think we have now two sides in the population: the ones who are eagerly wants to save the planet, and the other ones who don't care. I feel like there's not much in the middle, but let's see how fast we will progress. And yeah, let's talk about in 2027.
Okay, and let's make the market in the meantime and build, and hopefully we'll meet again soon in person in Dortmund or elsewhere. Thanks to Nadine, KUMO, Johannes, Particula, Erich, to Tokens, and of course also Conference for making this webinar in collaboration with Bundesblock possible. Thanks to all of you for listening in. And if you have any questions, we are running out of time now, so please you can get us on LinkedIn or on other channels. Thank you, and see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Nice evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.